Welcome to 8 Cubes, the show where two of the best Marvel Snap players on Earth like to talk about how they're two of the best Marvel Snap players on Earth. We cover the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap, starting with the leaked patch. And for those who are unaware, Marvel Snap's official website accidentally published what their notes may be for the January 9th patch. Now, we know that patches can only really happen with enough lead time for the various app stores to approve them. So very often when you see patch notes a week before something happens, it has already been in the pipeline for a while. It's too late for them to change it. Now, whether or not they're going to change these is still up in the air, but right now, I would be surprised if these changes did not make it to the live version of Marvel Snap. And we're going to start with Loki, who goes from being a 4-5 to a 4-6. And before you get all mad, what they did with his text was keep him the same. He steals your opponent's cards and gives them -1 cost. But instead of doing anything else, he is transforming those cards, meaning it is likely that cards like Collector and Quinjet will not work with Loki cards anymore.
Yeah, I joked about in the previous video that if they made Loki a 4-0, I would never play this Kyra again. Good thing they didn't do that. But I just want to say that, like, I think firstly, when you look at 4-6, you're like, oh, this is Iron Lad stats. If it like whiffs, you don't really care that much because it's still a 4-6. So
Yeah.
this is currently, I think, where Loki is at right now. The effect remains much the same, except one very big difference. It's a big difference, by the way. Like the very big difference is it doesn't buff Collector anymore because you don't it transforms your hand. You don't like add cards that instantly in your deck or whatever. So not being able to buff the Collector actually makes one of the biggest aspects of the deck, which is like having like an insane like 215 Collector or whatever, like a bit out of the window, which is very important, right? Because that tones down the early game like snowballing start of like going Collector into Loki by a lot. But of course, I feel like, so people will be like, oh, is this a nail in the coffin for Loki? I am 100% sure it is not the nail in the coffin for Loki. Like, I'm very, very sure that the Loki deck will still be played. It's just, what is it going to be played in? I know, if this is the exact change that's gonna happen, I think KM has been experimenting with like good cards Loki, right? Like with Zabu, Miss Marvel, Dino,
Yep.
Generation, stuff like that. I played that a bit of myself as well, and that particular build, I kind of maybe missed Collector a bit less because like if you go like Zabu into Loki, it's just throw their stuff out, then you top deck Dino, then you play Dino. Like it's still a lot of things. And Miss Marvel is Miss Marvel, right? For a reason. So what do you think, KM? What do you think Loki will be like going from here?
A lot of that. I think that this changes the dynamics of how you build Loki decks and maybe changes the dynamic of what he is. The Iron Lad comparison is, I think, a good one. He is a card that is just good now. Like you put him in stuff and like sometimes he's going to just absolutely win you the game. He's the kind of card that I do think goes in like the Dino style versions. One thing that is interesting, though, is Collector pushes you away now. The fact that Loki no longer works with him pushes you away from the bounce style things, which were doubling up on the Collector by sending their own cards back to hand and with Loki. And the weird question I have is, are we still running Collector in our, Snowguard, Coulson, Dino deck? Is that still a thing that we're doing? One thing that's really interesting to me is this doesn't really seem to decouple Loki from the broken stuff that he goes with, right? Like you'd think that the idea here is, okay, well, we can't run Collector with Loki anymore, but where else are you going to run Collector? Like, aren't you always going to run Collector in the deck that wants to generate random stuff and put it in hand? I just don't know exactly where, it's like they broke Loki's package in half, and like I don't exactly understand how we're supposed to play him outside of that package, because isn't the point of this to make him a different card? I don't really know. It just sort of feels like, oh, I'll just play the same Dino Loki deck. It probably will be worse, and maybe that's just enough, but I don't even know. It reminds me of the Snowguard nerf, where it's like, all right, we took this card that was sort of generally applicable, and now we made it so that it only exists in the place where it is best optimized, regardless of how well it actually fits there, and regardless of how fun it is for that card to be a part of that package. And yeah, I honestly don't know. Are we gonna be entering an era of just people playing value Lokis? Like when you compare what he does to what White Queen does, it seems like it's significantly better. So maybe you just like play him in whatever. I don't really know. He's a very weird card now. And I gotta say, I like him better when he's an archetype to build around rather
Mm.
than what he might be in this form. I will say that design wise.
Yeah, I thought of something really interesting, which is like, I mean, we are already currently doing like what Zabu, Loki, Miss Marvel, sometimes Shang, sometimes Ange. Like this is just basically like the Dark Hawk deck without the Dark Hawk, and then you play
Yep.
Loki and stats, right? It's the same thing because like you lean a lot into Miss Marvel, which leads very nicely into our next topic.
Miss Marvel is getting an additional cost attached to her, which is to say, you now have to have 2 units in the lanes that she is providing her arms to. You are no longer able to just play 1 unit in a lane and get Miss Marvel as a gigantic 415. For me, I think one card that this raises the value of is Doctor Doom, and another card that this raises the value of is Jeff, because these are the kind of cards that are going to be able to guarantee that you're getting as much out of your Miss Marvel as you already are currently. So I do think that there is like a real additional deck building cost associated with this. Another aspect of this that I find interesting is just how much you're going to feel it when you don't draw your early game in a Miss Marvel deck now, because you're going to be really running the risk of your Miss Marvel not being on because you didn't draw your early game, which changes your snap incentives. What do you think about new Miss Marvel?
Yeah, so one of the things that makes a very big difference was that Miss Marvel used to put a lot of pressure on like lane locations with no cards, right? Because if you have Miss Marvel in the middle, then if you have Miss Marvel in the middle, then your one of your left or right locations can have nothing there. And then on the final turn, you play like a Doctor Doom, and that's 10 power. Or like in the you could also do like leech on turn 5, and that's 8 power, and then you leech them into turn 6. So like you kind of like lose the ability to suddenly have a burst of power in one of your locations because Miss Marvel now needs you to have like 2 cards, right? And like KM mentioned, I think aside from what I mentioned, which is like some of the like factors that would change, I think one of the biggest thing is that Miss Marvel is now a lot worse if you miss your curve, because if you miss your curve, you don't have enough stuff on the like the locations that you need stuff to be on, right? Like 2 cards especially, and that usually happens when you miss your curve. So I think deck building for Miss Marvel, you can't really be going like, oh, I'm just gonna have Miss Marvel plus a 5 plus a Doom and that covers everything. That doesn't do that anymore, because like that's not enough cards on your left or right. You need to have like a 1, a 2, or 3. So you Miss Marvel is like worse, not cause like she's actually a bad card anymore. She's not a bad card, she's a good card. But like she's worse because you kind of can't afford to not like draw well or curve
Yeah.
with Miss Marvel
Which
anymore.
also changes your snap incentives, right? Because now
Yeah, and
suddenly
deck
when you
building.
have
Yeah.
those early cards, you're like, oh God, well, I have to snap, right? Like this is what my dad
Yes.
is the only time my Miss Marvel is on, right? If I'm not snapping this, then I'm not snapping anything. And that's like a
Yeah.
really interesting situation as well.
I like this mention a lot because like now it's literally like the idea is now like if I have an early game, I have a 415 potentially online.
Yeah.
If I don't have an early game, I lose almost 15 stats, which is a lot of difference, right? So I think that's a very good analogy that we can work on, which is like if you have an early game, you technically could gain 15 stats. But if you don't have an early game, you might lose 15, you might lose 5, you might lose some stats. So Miss Marvel's that direction right now. And I think it's a good change. Like I think this might be the better change compared to what we thought of, which is like the 4-4-4
Yep.
change. I think this might be better
I
actually.
agree.
It's a good one. I like this one a lot.
It's a great example of the philosophy of balancing for the low end by giving this a card more low rolls, right? The high
Yes.
rolls are still there. You still get to feel as good as you do. She's still going to feel very strong when they draw right. But when they don't, it's going to be a very beatable deck. And that is very important. Next up, Annihilus going to 5/5 and getting a new piece of text that now says he doesn't send over 0 power cards, only things that have less power than 0. So, the hood, various things that may be in locations that give negative power, the void from Sentry. What I find confusing about this is they, in the notes, say that Annihilus was surprising to them because he was so good with just the small package of the Sentry and the hood,
The
right?
wood.
And I know that because I've been banging that drum basically since he came out. You can't overinvest in him. The more overinvested in him you get, the worse your deck gets. But why then would their change be to make it so you can only use him with Sentry in the hood? Like, I don't, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, if you're like, okay, yeah, Sentry in the Hood, that package, Sentry Hood and Nihilus, that's the problem we want to address. Why make it so you can only use him with that package? I don't understand it personally. It feels weird to me. I don't like it. I obviously, like, it doesn't impact me. I'm never gonna play him in a debris deck. But like, if you were someone who wanted to do that, like, now you can't, and that feels like for no reason almost. It feels like it needed to happen that way. I don't get it. The actual impactful thing for this card is the 2 power loss, which is a big
Yeah.
deal. He is now taking up the same amount of spot on the board, the same energy in your curve, but he is one of the weakest 5 drops you will ever even consider playing, but behind only perhaps Sarah and Leech, all of whom are, I would say, comparable in terms of impact, so maybe that's a good sign for him. But part of the upside of Annihilus was he was a pretty big body on his own, and right now he definitely is not.
Yeah, Annihilus really got gutted so hard, right? Like, firstly, the 2 power loss is very big. Like, we know like how much 1 power change can change the impact of a card on like the game as well. This is a 2 power loss, and yeah, making it so that it doesn't even work in the junk archetype, right? Because you can't send rocks, and like
Yeah.
the junk archetype always likes to send rocks. Okay, the junk archetype is not like popular and good like at all, but like now it loses the boss monster.
Yep.
It loses the boss monster, which to me didn't make sense as well. I guess they might see this as a future mistake. I don't really have much to add on this one, which when I saw the
Weird,
change, I was
right?
like, this is way worse. Like, it's not just worse, it's way worse. And yeah, I guess your investment in Annihilus might not pay off.
Well, I think it's the other way around, actually. It's like, okay, yeah, it's worse, but like, when you compare what doing Sentry Annihilus is to playing the card Hobgoblin, it's still just
Yeah.
like so broken. like,
Yes.
like it's still
It
just like
is.
it. Like I still think that doing what Annihilus does is like actually super broken and super insane. And the
Mm.
fact that he's getting nerfed means I might have to play again. Let me just say I might have to play against less Annihiluses. I'm not totally out on him. I'm gonna be real with you. Like
That's true.
I think that what he does with Sentry with the Hood is just so damn strong that I don't necessarily think this even matters too much. I'll feel it. I'll feel bad about it, but like, boy, is it a strong thing to do. And if there's less Annihilus in the metagame, well, then I can just play him on turn 5 and not really worry about it, which is actually when he's at his strongest because you're limiting their turn 6 so drastically. I don't know. I still have hope for my boy. And frankly, they noted in the patch notes that he's been like a massive outlier that was even more massive outlier at high elo. And I will say I want a little bit of credit for that. Like I feel like I've been pushing this for a while. Like, all right, yeah, he is a massive outlier because we're playing the good Annihilus decks up here.
Agreed.
Next up is Angel. He's getting text that now adds him to the battlefield from your hand and not just from your deck. A lot of people I'm seeing are saying this is going to be good. I don't think it changes too much for basically like the fundamental reason of you are using a card in your hand to get 2 power. That's just
Yep.
like we talk. Like, one of the things on my video where I talked about this, someone commented like, how can you say people overestimate how big of a loss 2 power is and then say getting 2 free power isn't that good? And the issue is Annihilus is still going to be the same card, right? You're still going to play him or not play him. You're going to put him on a board. He's going to take up 1 board space. You're going to spend 5 energy on him. He's going to be that 5 energy. With Angel, it's like the investment you're putting into it is including a bad card in your deck, right? Like,
Yes.
that's the issue, right? When Annihilus goes off still, he's going to be like a 5 and then plus the -10 from the Void, plus the -3 from the Hood, plus the unquantifiable value of taking up your opponent's board spaces. When Angel goes off, he's going to be a 1/2, and he's going to take up one of your board spaces. And I don't think Angel's a good card unless you're pulling him from the deck. That is the specific scenario in which he's good because he then represents deck thinning and greater consistency in your draws after you do that. Pulling him from your hand is like, it's basically the same as just drawing him. You're getting a 1 energy discount, you're getting 2 free power, and that is generally not worth going out of your way for, is the issue. When you look at playing something like Annihilus, you're going out of your way for a free -10 power. You're going out of your way for a free Hobgoblin and maybe another free Hobgoblin and some reasonable power on your side of the board, and mitigating the downside of a 4/10 and mitigating the downside of a 1/6, right? You're doing all this stuff. With Angel, you're getting a 1/2. It's not good.
Yeah, I think KM already summed up most of what I wanted to say. Like, I actually honestly included this Angel in this topic because I really wanted to just talk a bit about it, because a lot of people seem to
Dude,
think that
go.
like
Cook.
this is a
Cook.
huge
Let's go.
buff to
Cook their
Angel.
asses.
But like the biggest downside is that KM mentioned that I also 100% agree on, is that like you have to include the bad card in your deck, right? Like, it's not like it's an existing card in your deck that changed. It was never in anybody's deck. And now, like, thinking of trying to include this just so you can get 2 more power. Like, if it comes out from your hand, it's actually not even good. And like, if it comes out from your deck, well, you have to run it in your deck. So why not just run a better card, right? So yeah, I don't have much to say about Angel. I just want to
No,
like
no, no.
I
Keep
wanted to
going.
include it
Tell
here
tell me
just
tell me why it's bad when you pull it from your hand.
I mean, you had to draw a 1/2 that you don't want to play. That's the
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
So like, yeah, no, I just included this just to want to talk a bit about it. But like, because I know people that really like this card and want it to be better for like months. But I think after looking at this, they probably also agree that it's probably not gonna be that much better. Yeah, that's about it.
God, I mean, like, I keep thinking of things they could do to make this card not ass. But one thing I think people really underestimate is how bad every 1-drop in Marvel Snap is that isn't attached to an effect that you want to use in the bounce package, basically.
Yep, it's true.
Every one of them that either is doing that, or alternatively is one of the like big scaling 1-drops. Sunspot, Nebula, High Evo, Misty Knight. Those are the kinds of 1-drops that are playable, right? It's either
Yes.
stuff you want to be doing, Sunspot, Nebula, Misty Knight, occasionally Echo, but like let's be real here, right? So
Mhm.
you're looking at the cards that are disruptive and repeatable, or powerful and repeatable: Hood, Korg, Iceman, Spider-Ham, Nico Minoru, Forge, things like that. Or you're looking at cards that scale dramatically higher than every other 1-cost card: Nebula, Misty Knight, Sunspot. Or the card doesn't work. That's pretty much it. That's 1-drops in Marvel Snap. And when I had Brian Braun on my Guess the Cards show, for the first time we ever did it, he pointed this out about Yondu, which is your first turn playing a 1/2 is not actually that good. Like, any 1/2 that's just not doing anything good for you could be a card that actually impacts the game more. And
True.
Angel is a 1/2 that is just a 1/2. And that is a recipe for disaster.
Yep. And honestly, this is just like a opening intro for what I want to talk about, which is like the next topic, which is super exciting. It's not a 1/2, it's a 2/3.
All right, tell us what this new 2/3 does, buddy.
All right, so Quake. So what Quake was that previously 2/3 on review. If this is at the middle location, swap the positions of each location. You might not even know what this does because you never play the card. But now the new Quake 2/3 on review, swap the positions of the other 2 locations. So what this means is that if she's on the left, you play her on the left, she swaps the middle and the right. You play her on the middle, she swaps the left and the right, and vice versa. Why I think this is an insanely powerful change to Quake, right? Is because you have such control. Firstly, she's 2-cost, which is very important. She fits into curves. Secondly, she has so much like player diff like levels of ability to her. Like you guys already saw like how good Legion was. You guys saw how good Snowguard was after the change. This is similar but also different in that a player has control over locations. Locations have always been that one thing in Marvel Snap that a lot of people complain about. Like, oh, I got screwed over by locational RNG. Cards like Legion, Snowguard, and Quake let you be a bit more in control of locations. And this little bit more in control of locations across a huge sample size, especially Conquest, Battle Mode, lets you player diff, lets you come out on top with the 13th card in your deck, which is the locations, right? I call it the 13th card in your deck because with Quake, Snowguard, and Legion, you actually have control over them. So they are technically like a 13th card. All right, KM, tell me a bit more about what you think of Quake.
So I think this actually is really interesting in the context of the 1/2 stuff we just talked about, right? Because this could reasonably be regarded as a card that is like when you need to have the right circumstances to put it in your deck, right? And I think Legion is pretty instructive of what those circumstances need to be, which is the rest of your deck better be hard carrying you in terms of power, right? When Legion was at his best, it was because we had Craven and Angela doing the heavy lifting, and those were cards you would play before Legion, or because we had Brood and Absorbing Man doing the heavy lifting, and those were cards you would play before Legion. And when Legion is at his worst is when those early engines are not available. And those early engines require, like, they've been nerfing those early engines pretty consistently, honestly. They got rid of Angela, they got rid of Elsa, they got rid of Werewolf by Night, who is still fine, but he's anything but an early engine. And now we're in a situation where there's a lot of pressure on your turn 5 to provide a lot of power. Your turn 5 and your turn 6 need to be doing important and big things because your early game is not able to carry you the way it was when Legion was one of the best cards in the game. The reason I bring this up is because Quake at 2-3 is infinitely easier to fit in these decks than Legion at 5-7. It is so much less of a cost to play a 2-3 than it is to play a 5-7 in these metagames where there's a lot of heavy pressure on your turn 5 to do things like, play a Devil Dinosaur or whatever, which is like twice as big as a Legion,
yeah.
right? Like, this is a really, 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 really powerful card, and I actually think I'm gonna hate it. I think I'm gonna hate it. Like, imagine having, like, it provides, it's one of the things, we'll touch on this in the next section, but like, I hate these turn 6 will they, won't they situations about where these locations are gonna flip. I can't imagine how much anxiety I'm gonna have the next time I have to play a Baxter building game or a Nexus game with this card out there. It's gonna be a nightmare. I truly, truly dislike it, and I hope it is much worse than I think it is, basically.
I actually feel like we need to talk a little bit more about this card, which is I suddenly thought of a few things, which is firstly, I agree with everything you say, and I also want to add on that the fact that it's 2-3 fits very nicely into curves, right? Like you can
Yep.
go like I'm gonna like throw random examples out there right now. Like you can go like Quake and flip a Wakanda somewhere else to go Shang on the thing that you couldn't Shang. So 2 + 4, Quake to move the Wakanda, then you Shang,
That's so
or
gross.
Quake the Nexus, right? That's obvious
Yeah.
one. That you've been doing that with Legion sort of already, but this is a bit different. Legion just swaps everything. This one moves things. Quake Death's Domain. You get where this is going. Quake
It's so messed
stormed
up.
locations. Like
Yeah.
I think this card, I don't wanna be too like absolute about it, but I think this card is absolutely busted. Like, and I will enjoy playing this card, but I wouldn't really enjoy if my opponents know how to play this kind of cards like me, because I've
Yeah.
been really good at using Legion and Snowguard timings. My Legion and Snowguard timings have been always on point, but this is another card that's very similar. But if people start to realize that they can do certain things with this card as well, it's gonna be very scary, because like on turn 5 or 6 or whatever, it opens up a new dimension of worry, right? Now you don't have to just worry about points. You also have to worry about locations and points in the right locations and what certain locations can do if they swap to a
I
certain few
hate
places.
it.
Yes, and also you can play Quake on the left or the middle or the right. So there's not just one way of
Yes.
swapping. There's multiple ways of
So
swapping and
bad.
multiple permutations to worry about, which also affects
Oh.
your very early snaps. Because if you're snapping before 3 locations are reviewed, then you see the third location, like, oh my gosh, they run Quake. Then you're just like, oh. So, that kind of thing. So this is a very scary card. Scary good.
Yes.
And also just scary. So
Yes.
I think she will open up a lot of crazy plays the moment she's changed. I'm down for it, but I'm also scared.
Mm-hmm. So I saw some discourse on Twitter as to what the biggest design mistake Marvel Snap made during 2023 was, and we've been very complimentary of the Marvel Snap team. So I think we get just like a couple minutes to be like not complimentary, be like, what did we hate the
Free
most?
pass.
And I will throw this one out there. What I hated the most in 2023, and this actually ties into the Quake thing, was Eliath. Not that it was like overwhelmingly broken or anything, just its play pattern as a card that does what it does on the final turn of the game was so annoying. It, like, now that they've added the ability to add, like, play around it with priority, it's like fine-ish. But the issue you have is that as long as the card exists and your opponent has priority, you have to pick how you play on the final turn, where it's literally just, do I play around Eliath and lose to anything else? Or do I play around literally every other card in the game and lose to
And lose
Eliath?
to Eliav.
I hate that. I just, like, I don't like that kind of gameplay. It's exactly what I'm afraid of with Quake. And it's like I truly, truly disliked having to deal with it. Again, I honestly don't think the card was that broken. I still kind of like I really don't. Like even at five
Yeah,
five
same.
doing what it did, it's like, I don't think it was really that broken. Loki was better basically the entire time the card existed. Like it really wasn't the biggest design problem they had, but it was just deeply unfun in a way that I think is is very, very frustrating to think back on, and I'm grateful we're no longer there. So that's my nominee for biggest design mistake of 2023. What's yours?
So my next comment might make some people unsubscribe, but hopefully you don't. But so my biggest design mistake I feel is collectors. But you have to hear out what I want to say first, because I know
No,
there's a
I
big
don't. I agree with you.
there's a
Thumbs
big
up.
collectors following in the game, and I want to put it out there first that like I loved OG collectors. I really wanted this to work. I mean, we made Browdy bring it to a tournament and he won the whole
Hmm.
damn thing. So I think OG collectors, I like collectors. The fact that I knew an effect like collectors existed is great. But my point here is that I think if Second Dinner could look back, and I think we've talked about this before, they wouldn't mind never giving the player base the idea of what Galactus did. Like, if the idea to blow up left and right locations and leave you with one never existed, I think they might could
Yeah.
potentially take it back. But the thing is they can't now because it's been introduced. So everybody has this like love for Galactus or hate for Galactus. The Galactus is one of the OG like non-interactive game winner cards, right? Like in a sense, I wouldn't say it's non-interactive, but like it's one of the few absolutes, like coupled with the Alive that made it even more absolute for a period. Like I feel Galactus, if they never like it's like if man never discovered fire, you know, like in the Stone Ages, that kind of thing, we'd probably all be living in darkness. But okay, that's a bit extreme. But like if we
So what
never
you're saying is
discovered
Galactus is Prometheus, and it needs
I
to
don't
like
know, man.
are you telling? Wait, hold on. I'm trying to parse this analogy. Do we have to go back to the Stone Ages before we discovered fire? Is that what you're saying we need to do?
All right, not exactly that, but like that's the closest thing that I could think of on the spot. But like, if we never knew Galactus could
Yeah.
exist, I think it might be better, but
We,
subjectively better. Then again,
we
it's already here, so
all
whatever.
right.
But yeah, that's one I think.
Guy who makes
Yeah.
his living on computers suggests we need to revert to prehistoric world.
I'm just saying, man. I love Galactus, but it is
No,
what it
I'm with
is.
you. I think that if they had never like I think it's one of those designs where it's like Ben Brode went into the lab and just came out with something completely insane and like 20% of the player base is like that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. I love it. And
Yeah.
we can't go back now. He's
Yeah, we can't
cooked.
go back.
He's cooked. It's
We
already
can't go
happened.
back.
This is his
Yeah.
you watch Breaking Bad, this is his blue meth. It's already out there.
Yes.
It's already happened. It is there. Let's talk about Marvel Snap's newest season pass card, Scar, Son of the Hulk. 611 gets discounted for every 10 power card you have on the board. Interestingly enough, the like multipliers like Monster, Metropolis, and the location that doubles the power of your strongest card there, they don't count for some reason, but things like Nidavellir or Xandar will. There is some sort of layering issue happening right now there, but that is not really the point. The point is this card is like what? Fine? Like pretty okay in Thanos Lockjaw and totally unplayable everywhere else? Is that the vibe you're getting off of him?
Yeah, Scar, I've been testing a lot of different places to play Scar. I even tried him in Shuri, tried him in traditional Lockjaw, tried him in the Thanos Lockjaw. The only place I found Scar to be like decent is Thanos Lockjaw, which is very interesting because like when I say decent, right, I mean like half the time I don't get to play the card and I don't mind because like
Yeah.
yeah, I don't mind. Like in every other deck that I tried Scar, I kind of minded like having a dead 6-11 or even sometimes on the final turn 4-11 when I wanted to play another 6 instead. But like in Thanos Lockjaw, there's like so many big dudes, right? Like Lockjaw gets you big dudes, big dudes. Like having a lot of big dudes on the board complements the Scar. And like if you don't get the big dudes on the board, well, you never get to play the Scar and you lose anyway, so you don't really care. Like it's like that kind of thing. But Scar does open up one thing for me, in which is like I mean I talk about 2+4 a lot, like since with the Quake and everything. Scar at 2 costs on turn 6 is Scar plus Shang-Chi, which
Yeah.
is crazy swings, right? Very similar to what old Death Wave, pre-nerf Wave plus Death stuff used to let us do. So I'm very incentivized to like keep experimenting with this. But I just have to say that like our previous video, I think I mentioned that like we should never look at Scar as a 0-11 for the most part. And yeah, it holds true. 0-11 Scar almost never happens. And if it happens, you are probably playing into a Gamma Lab. So it happens. That's why. But like it almost never happens for like a good reason. And 211 is like where we should look at for like brokenness. And I think it's already
Yeah.
very broken at a 211. But having said that, I mentioned traditional lockjaw, right? Traditional lockjaw, you don't even have time to generate like this 211 because like you want to play other things, right? You want to play Jane on 5, you want to play, you're probably just gonna play a 6 on 6, which is like the Scar, even if it's not discounted. So
Right. Like the whole point of the traditional Lockjaw deck is you go Lockjaw, Thor, Jane, and then you convert the zeros into real cards, so you're
and
effectively
then you play a
playing
6,
two 6 drops, right? Like that's the whole point. So when are you doing something that actually works here?
Yeah.
Kyra, 3-4, ongoing, that says your 1s and 6s can't be destroyed. Much to my chagrin, I would consider her a disappointment. And I'll tell you why she's a disappointment. Because I can't play Zoo still. That's why I wanted to play Zoo. And it turns out it still sucks. And I'm mad. No. It's like I did want that, but I didn't really expect it. But yeah, no, I mean I'm still gonna try. I miss May 2022. I miss playing Khazar Zoo. I miss it, and I want her to bring it back. As is though, she's pretty clearly just a high Evo card, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, this card, I've tried her in a few different shells, but like I've very quickly gravitated off of her in many decks because okay, so she's a global effect. That's the good part. She's like the old Luke Cage. Firstly, let's get old Luke Cage back. The current one is horrible. But like I think she is very good in high evo specifically because the only thing you really need to protect is your 1s and your 6s, right? Like nothing else really like dies to anything. Like your hard carries are your floaters, your sunspots, your misties, your nebulas, and then your game winners are your 6s, which are your hawks, she-hawks, infinots. So she fits really well in high evo she not. She also kind of does have some place in Thanos Lockjaw because there's a lot of like quite a bit of 6s there as well. But also the 5s are also kind of big like Dino, which she doesn't protect. So I guess you do get some protection from Killmonger in Thanos Lockjaw. But obviously the Thanos Lockjaw that I like to play is like Death and Killmonger. So you kind of want to blow up your stones anyway. Kyra, I don't think she's a complete disappointment. I think she has use case. I don't think she's worth buying for 6,000 right now, but she's like a global effect, right? Like in certain metas in the future, there's a good chance she might be better. So like she's one of those cards that like you could get, and just get and hold on to it for like for a while and see what happens to the meta game.
I'm probably gonna play Zoo. Like I'm gonna be real with you. Like it's not gonna be good, but I'm probably
can try.
Yeah, like I'm probably gonna do it. What do you? You're not gonna be able to stop me. I'm making my Squirrel Girl into the world's shittiest Doctor Doom, and you can't stop me.
I've seen people do that, but yeah, I've just seen it. It doesn't win.
Okay.
I've seen it.
Like it's honestly it's okay. Like it's a deck that here's my Zoo theory, right? You're gonna get some wins you shouldn't because people think your deck sucks. Like you're gonna get people to stay in because they're gonna be like, what? I'm gonna fucking lose to Zoo. And then they will.
Wrong.
Like it does happen.
You're not wrong.
But like, and I know
wrong.
because I'm people. Like I've been in those situations where like I played a Loki and got a hand that kind of sucked and then played it badly. Because I'm like, who remembers playing Zoo, right? Like it's a very like I don't know. I think there's like some element of you're like, oh, I'm playing against noob, so you stay in more. And I do think there's some value to that. It probably won't work for me because I'm a streamer though. Sad.
No, the funny thing is when you said I am people, I also think I am people because like the Loki example is crazy, right? Like I will Loki into a Zeus like Blue Marvel and stuff, and right, I look at all these like useless cards and I get a Blue Marvel, okay, fine. Then you realize that they also have Blue Marvel and Khazar and their Squirrel Girl is like a 110 or something.
And you're just like, wait a minute.
And the moving Nightcrawler is like a 1-4, and then you're just like, wait.
You're like, wait, how are they still beating me? They play like an Electra or something, and you're just like, oh my god. Like, it happens.
I've lost to that, by the way. I've lost to that.
It's real. Like it's real. Zoo is like almost a real deck. All right.
Almost.
I will live and die by that. I think that is true, and I won't let this stop me from like playing it more. All right, y'all, I've gone a whole 30 minutes without mentioning my mustache, so check out my mustache and remember to check out Lamby's channel, which you're watching this on right now. Remember to like and subscribe to my boy Lambie series. Turn that bell on for notifications so you can see whenever one of these and more videos go up from the best Marvel Snap player in the world, Lambie series. Thank you so much. I will see you in the next one. He will take us out.
If that, do like, comment, and subscribe on this video, and check out for the next video on KMBest channel. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.